I'm here at World of Water in Oak Tree Garden Centre, Bracknell. This is a video I wanted to make for a while, but unfortunately with the recent COVID-19 issues, it's obviously been quite difficult to get out and film things. So some of this actually was filmed prior to lockdown, and now I managed to come back here today to finish off what I started. Today I'm going to show you a number of the fish that have been hand selected by Dan, the store manager here. This particular branch of World of Water is, I guess it's probably different to a lot of the other branches in that they actually go out to Japan and Israel and hand pick their fish. So the standard of fish is incredible here, as you will see. And it's my pleasure really to share some of that with you. So these are Isa Jumbo Tosai Sherrows. So these are only a year old and already they're a good size. You can see some great body shape on some of these fish. A lot of them, although the black looks slightly greyish at the moment, that's natural with young fish like this, so that will deepen over time. So you can see some incredible patterns. Two particular fish from this batch that catch my eye. One is this one. You can see lovely placement of the benny, nice sort of spread across the body, good balance of sumi, lovely clean skin, nice thick body shape as well, so potentially will be a big fish one day. The other one I quite like is, actually there's a couple here, but particularly like the sort of crisscross pattern of the sumi on this fish. You can also see, if I move this other one out the way, it's got lovely motoguru, so that's the black base on the pec fins, so it's nicely balanced and sort of gives a nice pleasing effect to the whole fish. But all in all, this is a great batch of fish, and they also come with a breeder certificate, which is a sort of a proof of origin and identifies that fish for its life. So great collection here. Okay, so we have a bowl of Gromo here. I have to admit, Gromo aren't perhaps a favourite fish of mine, but there is something quite pleasing about these ones. So Gromo are famous for having a kind of sort of a series of overlaid colours. So you could see sort of almost purplish sort of a colour where the black and the red are sort of combined to create these kind of interesting dark purplish sort of colour. Some highlights from this bowl, so you can see there's a little sort of a Tancho Gromo here. Some of the patterns, like this particular fish has got a great spread of pattern, as does this one here. And if you look closely, you can see the sort of the way the black and the red is layered over each other to create that interesting effect that Gromos are famous for. Here we have a lovely selection of Kujaku, also known as the peacock koi, probably one of the most blingiest varieties. So you can see, again, look at the freshness of the skin on these, real nice, light, bright, white base layer. A couple of interesting ones in particular, so this Maritain one here, so that's where they have a sort of red mark on the head, but obviously it has some red markings on the body, which denotes it as Maritain rather than Tancho. Then you've got this multi-step one here, so I think that's a particularly lovely looking fish. And I think the nice thing about a good Kujaku is the scale reticulation. So if you have a look here, you can really see the definition of the scales. You've got some sort of a Matsuba effect coming up through the scales there, and that's something I think that I personally look for when I'm looking at young fish, is how clean, how neat and tidy is that scalation. Are the scales nice and even? So there's a couple of nice examples here that I would easily happily put in my pond, particularly I think this one here. Okay, so here we've got a bowl of some larger Kujaku, remember the peacock koi. So you can see on here we've got some lovely Matsuba scalation coming through, and you can see the depth of the benny on some of these fish here, really nice. So lovely deep red on the head of these two fish in particular. This one, although the benny is slightly more more orangey than my personal preference, but you can see the actual placement of it is lovely, and some really nice dark markings in the center of each scale sort of coming up. So a season in an outdoor pond, and I think fish like this will really sort of develop. I think you'll certainly see the Matsuba and the Benny really increasing in depth. And sometimes that's what these fish need to really sort of develop nicely, is just a bit of additional sunlight, chance to grow. But lovely looking fish. I mean, look at the depth of the red on that. Now, another detail you can see on some of these fish are the little shiny crystals you can sort of see in the center of the scale. So when a metallic fish has a good build-up of those at a young age, it's a good sign for future potential luster. So often as fish age, the metallic sheen does tend to fade, but the more concentrated those sort of crystals are, the longer that metallic sheen will exist on that fish. So when you're looking for high quality metallic fish, look out for those, because they're a sign of longevity in that fish. And just look at the skin quality, look at the detail on those scales when you look at it up close. Okay, now these are really unusual fish. I think they're pretty special. So they come from a Japanese breeder, Wada, that's very famous for producing kajaku and new variations of the kajaku. These particular ones, I think it's difficult to classify them. I think I personally would probably classify them as Benny Ginga, but I think they're up as something else, and I know they're offspring of Kirin, which are sort of traditionally more yellow type kajaku. But look at the lovely dark base color on them, the metallic sheen, even the depth of the Benny on them. They are incredible looking fish, very unusual. Very different from the traditional kajaku with the white base layer. So these are just wonderful looking fish. Again, I mentioned the crystals earlier to sort of denote longevity in the metallic sheen. You can see these are loaded with them. So the skin quality is incredible. Definitely, if you're looking for something that's different and striking, then this is a variety that's definitely worth your attention. Okay, now geekery, as you know, are one of my favourite varieties. Here we've got a nice little bowl of just a few types of geekery here. So what always something that I watch out for is, for me, I like what they call that sort of floating style Benny, and that's where the red appears to sort of almost sit above the base. So I think here you've got quite a nice example of that. In particular, what you need to look out for is, if you want that kind of quality, is how clean is the Benny. So you can see the red here is nice and clean. There's minimal amount of black coming through, and especially in our sort of colder, harder waters, you find that with geekery they can get really black really quickly. So I personally would avoid a fish like this, which looks really nice at the moment. You can see the lovely sort of net pattern on the scalation, but it also comes through the red, and at this stage a fish that's already doing that is likely to end up really dark. You may not even see much of the red as it sort of gets to sort of about 30-40 centimetre. You might find actually it just becomes a very, very dark fish, which is fine if that's what you want, but if you're looking for something striking in terms of balance of Benny, then often best to avoid those at this young age. Another example is this one here. You know, it's got a really funky little head pattern there. Quite like the little dot of Benny on the forehead there, but again, I think that will one day be far too dark to really show off the Benny. Now, the one I like most in this bowl is actually this one here. So you can see the Benny is really nice and clean. Head pattern is lovely, and I think as the fish grows and the black comes up underneath it, hopefully it should create quite a striking fish. So that would be my top pick personally from this bowl. But again, it's down to people's different opinions on what they like, and at the end of the day, you've got to live with it in your pond, so you've got to pick something that you want. Okay, so now if we compare these two koshiki to the last bowl of, that I shared, and these are really good examples. So here you can see the definition of that floating beni. In fact, both of them have really clean beni. So the red is super clean. Look at this, there's no black showing through anywhere on the red here. But at the same time, you can see the black scalation beginning to come through on the base there. Similarly on this one, look at the hair pattern on this fish, it's incredible. Lovely clean pattern on the head there, nice scalation. So if you put these outdoors in a pond in our sort of cold, hard water, I think you'll see incredible fish after a year or two. My suspicion is on this particular Ginrin koshiki, you'll see that this base colour will darken up and create a lovely contrast, but the red will stay nice and clean. And that's kind of what you want in a new style koshiki. Similarly on this fish, you can see that the base colour is already darkening up. So when this one was younger, it would have been as light as this fish here, but you can see it's already darkening up, but at the same time, it isn't overpowering the red beni at any level. So lovely contrast there. Okay, so here we've got a bowl of 3 Achiba. It's another variety I quite like. Certainly renowned for their sort of friendly temperament because of their Chagoy heritage. So you can see 3 sort of fairly different looking fish, but all of the same variety. Here you've got one which is a beautiful, slightly reddish hint of the brown pattern, but look at the reticulation on the scale. So you can see every single scale is marked out by that sort of net pattern effect. Really beautiful. And you've got this one which is a slightly more, I guess, a sort of mustardy brown sort of colour. But again, the scalation is very nice. And then, can't beat a bit of bling. Here you've got a Ginrin Achiba, so you can see the shiny scales that really sort of separate it from the other two. When you get a fish like this and you sort of have it in your pond and the sun shines on it, it's incredible the shine that comes off this kind of fish. So sometimes when you're looking through a vat of hundreds of small fish, it's really easy to overlook some of these quirky, kind of interesting little ones that don't always stand out, but when you look at them closely you can see some really interesting details. So this here I think is a young beni kumonu. It's quite small, the size of my hand. It's probably 4 to 5 inches in size, but it's got incredible sumi. So you can see the dark sumi pattern is really dense, and just underneath it you can see some of the beni appearing underneath it. But for a young fish, there's certainly a very fascinating look about it. You can see there's a couple of Doitsu Ginrin scales on the back there. But no, I love the quirkiness of this little fish, and it's one of those ones that will be really fascinating to see what happens as it grows. The skin on it is very clean, lovely looking. But yeah, that sumi and beni is really fascinating the way it overlays each other. Certainly a trait that you see in the Kumonu family. And if you look at the head, you can see there's sort of a darkness underneath, so either that's sumi that's fading as the water warms, or it's something that will come up. And I suspect this is one of those fish that will change quite a lot throughout its life. Okay, here's another variety that I particularly like. So often confused with Doitsu Kohaku, but aren't because of the metallic sheen. So these are Kikazui. And just look at the metallic sheen on them, in particular how pronounced the sort of variation between the red and the white is. This one is my favourite of the bunch, I think. Look how clean the head is, super shiny, super clean, just lovely fish, really striking when you've got them in your pond. And I've got a couple of myself. In fact, 2 came from the same breeder as this. as they grow, and they make for really striking fish in any pond. Okay, so we have something really special here. Now, all the fish I've shown you up to now have been Japanese fish. These ones are actually from an Israeli koi farm called Hazaria. Place I've been to myself actually a couple of times. Great setup to buy secure koi carp. But they also really specialize in some real sort of unusual varieties like these. So here we've got two Kumonu. So you can see these scaleless Doitsu fish here. Patterns almost like sort of Frisian cows. Really striking to the patterns. Such sharp divisions between the black and the white. Like Kumonu, other Kumonu you've probably seen, they can change so much throughout their lives. The black can come and go depending on the temperature of the water, the hardness of the water, and as they grow they change. But hopefully as they get older they sort of stabilize, and perhaps these will maintain these amazing patterns. But it's very rare that you see fish as incredible looking as these. I particularly like the metallic sheen that this one has. Not metallic enough to call it a geekery, but you can certainly see the skin quality is so good that it's got that kind of slight glow to it, as well as ginrin scales on the dorsal there. Now this one here is and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but it's a Matsubo Wakabe, which is actually a fully scaled version of the kikori. And you can see, look at the ginrin scalation on this. And again, as it gets older, the sort of sumi, the black, will come up. But it's incredible looking fish. Quite a size, this fish as well. I'd probably say that good sort of 55 centimeters probably.
Yeah, definitely 55.
Look at that. I mean, that is incredible. It's almost like ice. So, let me introduce you to Dan. He's the manager here at World of Water in Bracknell. He's also the guy that handpicked all the fish that I showed you today. Dan, tell me the highlights of the trip.
So one of the highlights of my trip for me personally is I went to Aoki Fish Farm, which is one of my favourite breeders. And while I was there, I was just showing him some of the pictures of the fish that I'd grown on for the season. And he had a look and he was pleased with how the fish had grown, and he said to me he'd like to show me some of the brood stock. So we went to one of his sort of secret ponds, if you like, and he showed me the brood fish, and yeah, it's a great experience.
Thanks, Dan, that's great. So if you're ever in the area, pop by the store. Be sure to give Dan a shout, and I'm sure he'll be happy to show you some of the fish that we've seen today. Thanks.